Of course, if we end up with your substitute calendar today, we won't get an opportunity to get to anything else on the calendar today. And I just feel like that's a little bit unfair to all of these people. It's really hard to get bills on the special order calendar. Working that rules committee to get somebody to actually take your bill as a pick. You've also gone through the committee process. You've gone through, if you're really a citizen legislator, you've gone through the process of having meetings and things back home to know what your constituents want. And that's why I assume most people on this calendar are sponsoring these bills, because these are things that are going to be beneficial to their constituency. That's the assumption that I made. So you've gone through all of that process and then get to the day. Excited, see your bill on the calendar. I'm number 1 or I'm number 2 on the calendar, even if I'm number 18 on the calendar for that particular day. And here we come up with the substitute motion today that literally will more than likely kill everything else that is on the rest of the calendar for the day. So, but that's more than likely what's going to happen if the previous days of session are an indicator of what's going to happen today. That particular bill at the top of the calendar, it definitely is going to be one that will end up killing most of the bills on the rest of the calendar for the day. And I just simply think that's unfair. Yay, I'm almost done. Get here today, bill is on the calendar. I've got my notes ready. I've got my spiel together, ready to talk to everybody about why this is a good piece of legislation. And there's some on here that I definitely know that I will end up supporting today if we end up getting to them. I see a good ethics spiel on this particular agenda. I see something for the University of South Alabama on the agenda today, and some other bills that I'm sure that folks really think that those are good bills. I talked to one of my colleagues from Jefferson County about a bill that he is sponsoring today that's on the agenda that if your substitute motion goes forward, we won't get to those bills.
Now, why are you saying
today at all? Oh, because I will be willing today.
Are you going to talk on?
Oh, I'm going to talk all day long. I've got a lot to say. You know I'm a talker.
Well,
and those young people that are here today from the 4th grade only had the opportunity today to, in a minute, they only had the opportunity today to kind of hear people talk about why this calendar is not a good calendar. And it would have been so nice for them today to hear about the merits of a particular bill, because, you know, that's when they do the Alabama history and they're learning more about representative democracy when they come here. And unfortunately, they didn't get an opportunity to really hear about the merits of some of these good pieces of legislation that are on here today. There's some good pieces of legislation that are going to create some jobs for the citizens of the great state of Alabama. I would love for us to be able to talk about some of those wonderful bills because we are in hard times right now. And I don't know about you, but in my area, those are the kinds of things that folks are talking about is jobs. Every time we come down here, it feels like to me anyway that we have bills that are on this calendar that are going to end up costing the taxpayer dollars in litigation.
A special order calendar is set by the Rules Committee, and there was a motion on the floor to move one of the bills up from later on in the calendar to the top of the calendar. It's a very controversial bill that deals with abortion. When we have those controversial issues, oftentimes we end up spending the entire legislative day on just that issue, and there you have 19 other bills that are on the agenda that don't have the opportunity to have a fair hearing, and I just really think that that's unfair to those.
As the law stands right now, you can perform an abortion up until the time that the child reaches viability. In other words, an abortion can be performed in Alabama up until the time that you're certain that the child can survive outside the mother's womb. Well, currently, viability is 24 to 26 weeks, depending on whose interpretation that you use, but it's 24 to 26 weeks after gestation. But this bill says that you cannot abort after the 20th week. And the reason that you can't abort after the 20th week is because there is, I believe, absolute and very conclusive medical evidence that shows that a child after the 20th week suffers pain. Prior to learning of the medical facts in this, when a child was operated on inside the mother's womb and there was no anesthetic applied, then the child would grimace. The child would show all the emotions and everything, all the physical evidence of pain. And then when they started applying an anesthetic, then the child no longer grimaced. The child no longer showed all the illustrations of pain that they had shown before. Now, this bill has already passed in Nebraska. Matter of fact, that's where I got the idea for this bill. And it passed in Nebraska last spring. Since that time, it has also passed in Kansas. It has passed in Idaho, and got the word this morning that it passed in the Oklahoma legislature yesterday. There are 13 other states that are considering this legislation now. But some people say that this is contrary to roe-v-wade, and I don't see it that way at all. Really, roe-v-wade has already been changed. It's been changed in, and I want to make sure I got the name of the case right, in the Casey court, in that particular case, really the concept of all of this was changed, where it says that the state does have a vital interest in the viability of a child. So roe-v-wade is not what it was in 1972. That's just a simple fact because of the Casey case that came before the Supreme Court. But to me, when you rip a child, and I believe a human being, out of the mother's womb, and you rip it out by their limbs, rip them apart, or you suck their brains out of their head, in my view, that is wrong. That is just flat wrong. And anyway, anything that I can do to help restrict abortion in this state, that's what I want to do. And according to the Department of Health, there were 79 children in the state of Alabama that were aborted after the 20th week in 2010. You say, well, 79 is not a lot of people. Well, it's a whole lot of people if you ask me. It's almost as many people as there are in this body.
I didn't see any place in your bill where it allowed for an individual who had been raped or because of incest or anything like that, having the opportunity of the right to do that.
It says if the mother's life is endangered or if a major bodily function is severely jeopardized, then she can have an abortion under those circumstances.
So, but it doesn't spell out specifics. So that
it doesn't spell out what?
It is not a specific. You just said that the life is in danger. So you're saying those areas would come under, those areas that I just mentioned would come under that statement?
I don't really think so, but.
Because of the supremacy clause, this is another one of those pieces of legislation that we'll be using your dollars to fight in court. We've already passed many bills already this session. Some of them are up in the Senate. We're going to be using your dollars. And those of us that were supposed to be sent down here as good stewards of your money, we're going to be using your money to fight these pieces of legislation in court. That's my main issue for standing here today in front of my colleague in opposition to this bill. We have many other things that we could have been talking about. People are hurting in the state of Alabama. I feel like a broken record now every single time I come to this microphone because I'm still waiting for us to talk about those issues and to debate the issues that are going to actually bring revenue into the state of Alabama, instead of using your dollars in the courtroom fighting against these bills that have already been decided on the federal level.
I have worked in a clinic, a women's health clinic that performed abortions. I have counseled women when they come in to make that decision, so I probably have more personal experience than anybody else in this room dealing with this issue directly. My understanding of the Republican Party is limited government control. We want to get government out of the business of people. But we've passed a number of bills already that are very intrusive into people's lives, and this one is very intrusive into women's lives. Of all the abortions that were performed last year in Alabama, do you know how many of these would have been affected by this bill? And let me tell you, it's 67. So it's not like we have thousands of women going to have abortions after the 20th week. And in fact, you mentioned the Nebraska case, and let me just tell you a little bit about Nebraska's case for those of you all who are listening. It's now pending before the Supreme Court for action. They have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees on this case, as they will in every other state that passes this kind of law. Everybody does have a right to their opinion about this bill. If you're opposed to abortion, then don't have one. That's my feeling about it. Your bill makes no provision for a woman who may be a victim of a sexual assault, a rape, or a product of incest, which happens more than you probably realize, especially incest. You know, and I've heard you say a lot about, you know, children, that you're pro-life. But here's what I find. People who say that are pro-life up until birth. When that baby is born, I don't see those folks coming forward to offer more money for child care, more money for child nutrition programs, more money for public education programs. I don't see that, and that offends me. I also don't see people coming forward saying we need 100% effective birth control that should be available to all women at all times, free of charge, so we don't have a situation of an unintended pregnancy ever. But we don't see that. All we see is people want to mandate that women have to carry those pregnancies to term. Once that child is born, boom, you're on your own. I know in our clinic we counseled them. If we had any reason to believe they had any doubts about this decision, we sent them home. You know, if you weren't sure about the decision you were about to make, then don't do it. Yeah, but we don't know how much this is going to cost. The public health department's going to, you know, if they're going to regulate it and provide a report, I don't know what that report's going to look like, but that's going to cost some money to us. And there's no fiscal note on here, as are many bills that we've seen coming from Republicans with no fiscal note. I feel like I'm the fiscal conservative here. And you said something about, you know, the medical evidence demonstrates that the fetus experiences pain at 20 weeks. I challenge you to give me an article in a peer-reviewed professional medical journal, not something promoted by the Right to Life, but a professional medical journal that dictates that. I challenge you to do that, because it doesn't exist.